Ryan Holiday he did this course called Read to Lead.
Right. Yes.
A couple months ago that I followed through with, and it's sort of what inspired my desire to create a course on dream goals. I don't have all the fancy software that he does to have it come out one day at a time, but my intention with what I'm calling 2020 vision is that you do it over the course of a week.
Cool.
So I haven't decided.
There's your one book a week right there.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, so it's not like a full-length book. It's supposed. I tried to keep it as concise as possible so that
an
people
ebook?
could.
What is it like?
Yeah, I haven't decided if I'm gonna break it. I think I'm gonna keep it as one book so that if somebody wants to print it, they don't have to open all these different PDFs and then print them all off individually. So it's a
workbose of sorts then.
Well, there's actually a supplementary workbook. So there's the course itself is written sequentially as like a book. It's like 12,000 words, 52 pages.
Okay.
I think, and or something like that. And then there's about 15 pages of workbook questions that you're supposed to do alongside each day. So there's space for writing it down in the workbook. Although I really encourage, we're already way on board with this. I really encourage people to pick up a journal and a planner that's paper to go along with it.
Just get off on that stuff. I'm so excited.
I give some alternatives for the more
in, November for next year.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
It's okay. That was actually part of the inspiration behind why I did this too. Because when I picked those up, I'm like, we talk about it a lot, but just anything that can encourage people to use those tools that just seem to be superior for productivity and
you want to talk about why that is? Can we put some science behind this so that people can actually not just think that we're being old fashioned?
Yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah, so I did write about it in the book as well because, and I didn't belabor the point because we've talked about it before, and I said, I tried to keep it really succinct, and it's stuff that we geek out on a lot, but as long as everybody knows why it's working, then it's important. So
it is important.
So the reason that I've made this with a workbook that you can print out and write down on is part of the reason too. Actually writing helps to join forces between your left and right brain.
Yes.
When you're writing something down, and it's so new, the tablet style of writing it down. I think it probably works fairly similar. I think there's still.
I'm sure they've studied it in a recent article somewhere.
It's probably getting there, and I think you're probably part of the way. But I just find the retrievability of stuff that you've written down in an actual paper journal of some sort, whether it's a bullet journal that's more for productivity and tasks, or if it's just a diary style journal where you're writing down your long form thoughts each day. It stores it in your brain in such an incredible way that you're like, oh, I know exactly where that is. And you can go back in through your journals that you've kept track of or that you've kept and really quickly find things. And the bullet journal does a great job of organizing that, even schematizing it to an even greater extent so that you can actually really quickly find stuff. That's one of the things that I find really useful with it. But yeah, it's all about how this actually primes your brain.
The more it's wild to me, but it so works. The more inputs you can put in your body of the same thing.
Yep.
We're reading it, you're thinking about it, and you're writing it, so you're actually feeling it. This is you're literally coding that into your body, and it's things you put more red flags around. You're going to notice more than just something that you put in a dark corner somewhere where you're like, oh yeah, I'll remember that later. And I think in this day and age with brains that work at hyper speed, it is so important. If you have stuff that you need to prioritize, you got to write it down. You have to get it in your brain in many outputs. And for some reason, I don't fully know the answer to this. You might, it's been a while since I've studied it, is that typing does not do the same thing as writing. I don't know why. I think there's an actual like part in our brain, I forget which lobe it is, but one of the sides of your brain that like writing is actually a thing that your brain picks up on.
Yeah.
Right? Versus I don't think typing maybe will evolve towards that, but maybe. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably mostly based on the evolution of it, but I think it's also I don't know if there's anything to do with the writing. I think the writing is also because of like the crossing of the hemispheres. I think that the act of writing itself is more like the right brain, like creative aspect, and then but once it's or I might be back. Maybe it's like the logical side of the brain is actually involved in the writing part of it, but it's the thoughts that are the creative right
driving
brain.
The writing.
Yeah. And so that's where you get this integration of the two hemispheres into the writing of it, and then seeing it on paper just works. I think it's just because we haven't evolved like screens. We haven't evolved to basically interpret that as information as well as stuff that's written down on paper.
Yeah, and I don't think like evolution is slow, guys, so I don't think that's going to happen in this lifetime. Like I think that maybe in a couple 100 years those people will be able to schematize computer words great.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's when the computer will just be in your brain anyway, so
exactly.
Maybe that's the evolution.
Maybe.
Just grow a computer brain.
So yeah, and then like you said, the sort of red flags around things, this also works extraordinarily well for priming our subconscious, which is
95% of your brain. So that's a good thing to work with.
Which is the other side of this that is sounds like The Secret, right? Like people think it's like magical or whatever. It's not magical. There's actually the science behind it. Yeah, you're just not aware that like your subconscious does 95%. It does a lot of the processing for you. And I did include a couple examples of this in the book because otherwise people think it's just something magical or woo-woo, but it's so when you've got that Amazon package that you ordered that's out for delivery, you see way more Canada Post trucks or you see way more UPS trucks because your subconscious is active on that. Or if you're shopping for a car and the red car, and these are things that actually there's actual research, there's studies that we know for a fact that if you're shopping for a red car, you're going to notice more red cars in your environment.
Sure. That's the whole idea behind like manifesting. And again, that's people think it's like, it's all spiritual, whatever. It's just that. Yeah. Like if you intend to create this thing in your life, it goes down into that subconscious, and then you're going to be like, whoa, look at that. It's happening. Yeah. You created that, and your brain's cooking it the whole time, right? And so you're actually priming yourself towards it. And that's why like thinking positive thoughts and not self-sabotaging thoughts is so important. Yep. Because your brain, like it's an input-output machine, and we're not aware of most of it. Totally. So we really need to be careful what we put in there. And so these are the things that I include in the course. So just kind of quickly going through the different sections. Obviously, it's about what your 2020 vision is, what you see for yourself, not only in the year 2020, but for the next decade and beyond. But it's building up the tools that you can use on a daily basis to get to that bigger goal. So day one is all about goal setting. It's figuring out what that dream goal is. So there's a lot of, that's why I want people to spend time on this and not just race through it. Yeah. Is it takes time to actually know whether you have to go for a long walk, meditate on it, figure out what your dream goal is. Yeah, that's not done. Rome wasn't built in a day. No. Yeah. And so, I mean, I even address that in the book a little bit on, it doesn't have to be your ultimate dream goal. You're still putting in the reps to figure out how this whole process works so you can be better when the opportunity presents itself. Totally. Like even just starting that kind of thinking. Even if it's just gets the ball rolling. Even if it's just losing 10 pounds when your ultimate goal is 100 pounds. And so then the second part of
day one is all about figuring out what the actionable steps are.
Good.
Because outcome goals alone, in my opinion, and the reason I call them dream goals is because that's not the be all end all. It's all about enjoying the journey that you're on and being able to take action, because that's when you start to find flow, and that's when you start to find meaning, is when you're actually enjoying what you're working towards.
Yeah.
Day two is what I call, I like the term time boxing, which is the whole batching thing. We've talked about this a bit in our time management episode. And I've started to realize more and more that if you stick kind of, I would say, strictly to some sort of time box schedule, you become way more efficient with your time. Like, I wouldn't say it's not productivity for the sake of productivity. It's so that you can accomplish things.
It's prioritizing, right? Like, it's just dedicating your day to the things that are most important.
Yeah.
And if you can intentionally set out this time box schedule, that means you have to be conscious of what your day looks like, which means you have to be prepared. You have to have a goal to reach. So it's not just a strategy for like making your day run smoother. It's really this strategy to help you reach something a lot bigger than just the day. So there's a lot to it. It's not just a trendy thing, right?
No, for sure. Day 3 is all about monitoring your energy. So it's a really important key thing that I've learned this past year is basically, without energy, nothing gets accomplished. And if you're running all the time on a 6 out of 10 on your energy scale, you're really you're really not maximizing your potential, whether it's your creative potential, your productivity, whatever, your leadership potential, how you're perceived by other people. And then it gets into a little bit more of what I kind of consider filling in some of that time box schedule with things that are going to help you towards your dream goal more. So the next day, I think we're at day 4, is movement, nutrition, and hydration. Very simple things, because it's something that requires coaching for your specific needs. So they're just like extremely simple tips on movement, nutrition, and hydration that I think anybody can accomplish with as minimal, interruptions to their life as possible.
That's what people need to realize, is that it's not going to take over. It can. Some people like that. Yeah. But it doesn't have to. No. I myself work out max 50 minutes. Like, I don't do. People think I'm in the gym like 3 hours a day. And I'm like, no way. Yeah. Like, and you can be efficient with this stuff.
And then the final 2 sections are on some of the stuff that's deeper that we've kind of just touched on. So gratitude and optimism is a day. And with that comes those affirmations, because and especially I like to write down the affirmations, and just what we talked about, it primes your subconscious to look for opportunities in your environment to accomplish things that you think are impossible, essentially. And gratitude is also really key to that. Like John Travolta, we were just listening to a podcast with him on Tom Bilyeu. Cool dude. And he was talking about hanging up on the negative person. Yeah. And that's kind of like, I think gratitude and positive thinking, it doesn't come natural to everybody.
No, but
it's a practice, and it's trainable. Yeah. And the more that you practice it, the more that you're once again, like energy and positivity. There's research showing that people that are that have more gratitude in their life have higher energy levels. So
it's like when you rub your hands together and things get hotter, right? Yeah. Like it's that. I'm getting excited for some reason, but it's. My mom always said energy gives you energy, and I never really understood that until I started to get deeper into this stuff. And then I'm just like, actually, the more that I practice, gratitude, and the more that I choose joy, the better it gets. Like, it's way more exciting, and that's that same, like, you're making friction. Yeah. But I want to, on that point, share a really practical tip. So I was listening to, I rode the train back and forth, to Toronto from Oshawa. Also, just side note, if you ever have to drive to Oshawa, that parking lot will be the death of you. Like, one day, if I get cancer, it's gonna be because of the stress that was induced in me in the Oshawa GO station parking lot.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, it's like Boxing Day every day. It is the worst. So, just know that.
Yeah.
But on that train ride, I was listening to a podcast from Elevate the Globe. I really like them. And they shared, it was like a small tidbit in that they have what they call a lobby talk at the very end where they just kind of hash out a few things. But it was so valuable. I forget what they called it. There was a term for this. But it's this like really easy practice on basically how to spiral yourself into a good mood. So there's some sort of science behind it. And again, I just took the practice and ignored all the science behind it because I was like, I need this right now.
Yep.
Set a timer. You need, I believe, 78 seconds to be in a better mood. Okay? That's not a long time.
No,
that's a minute and 18 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
But you spend the first 17 seconds thinking of anything that brings you joy. Doesn't matter. And just meditating on that for 17 seconds. We can all handle that. That's not too long. And then you take a thought that comes from there. So something might have popped up in your brain. And the next 17 seconds, you think about that. And just like, daydream. Put yourself in that situation. And you go through these 17-second intervals until you reach that, it's whatever the multiple of, it's 78, 68, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just over a minute anyway.
Cool.
Of gratitude. And it works. Like, it instantly puts you in a better mood. Yeah, you have to drop your ego with this misery loves company thing, because like I was in a grumpy mood when I listened to it, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So stupid. Yeah. And then I was spiraling the other way. So I was like, you know what? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Instantly shifted.
Cool.
Like, it's not hokey. It really works as long as you actually focus, right?
Yeah.
But that's such an easy tip. So...
Yep. For sure.
What is that? Day 6?
That's I think that's day 5.
Day 5.
Yeah.
Day 5. Spend a little over a minute thinking of happy things.
For sure. Yeah.
Easy peasy.
It's I actually tie it in with the 5-minute journal. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's been extremely effective. So there's three steps to my the gratitude practice that I'm not going to call it my gratitude practice because I've kind of learned it primarily from Tony Robbins, his perspective. So it's like past, present, future kind of gratitude. So you're
future's interesting.
Yeah, cool. So that's where it ties into the dream goal, right? So you're looking forward to something.
Right.
But I find that most people practicing gratitude are always looking forward. That's where the present moment may be like enjoying, the salt lamp that's in front of you.
Yeah.
And then the past is like a relationship, somebody you're grateful for, an experience, something in the past that like, and that kind of is a more balanced gratitude aspect. So that usually takes no more than 3 minutes. You kind of like meditate on each one. And writing it down is something that I find, once again, is more powerful, but then you take the time to think about it. And it ties in, then you do the affirmations. And you also, with the 5-minute journal, there's also the power list, or like the 3 most important tasks to get done. So it kind of combines it all together into one simple thing that only takes 5 minutes of your morning.
Yeah.
And then the final day is there's another bonus section on like stress control, but the real final day is on reflection, because
it's good.
Reflection is so important on this whole journey. For 2 reasons. If you're starting to like get down on yourself or discouraged, when you look back, and this is another reason I really like paper journals, you can look at how much stuff you've done in the past, whatever term, whether it's the past 3 months. So the reflection process actually is there's the daily one, which is actually sort of based on kind of the thinking of like Ben Franklin and Winston Churchill. He had this sort of quote that essentially asks himself each day if he was an effective person that day. And so that's something that the 5-minute journal actually does really well too, is at the end of the day, there's 3 spots for another gratitude practice. 3 more things of what was really awesome that day. And then 3 things that you could have done more effectively, or that you could have done better. And so you have this little daily practice, which is really important, especially if you're in the early stages. And then they go in further chunks from there. So there's a weekly one that takes, it might take up to an hour, if especially in the beginning on a weekly basis. If you're kind of reflecting and asking yourself how you can be more effective, it's good to get some time on the weekly basis. And then there's monthly or quarterly, and I kind of have it. It could be one or the other. It depends on how massive your dream goal is, really. If it's something like getting ready for a bodybuilding competition, you probably want to do a reflection monthly, right? To make sure that you're still on track. Yeah. If it's something like opening, or in the past, well, for me, like opening Flow Spa is one of the examples I use throughout the book, or the course, and that was more like the quarterly works better because it's over like a year
a lot of self-building.
And a half.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a lot longer. You won't see as much progress on a monthly basis. Yeah. So quarterly works better.
I think that's a really important point for people to just sit on right there, is that you're not going to see a lot of progress on a monthly basis.
No.
And that doesn't mean that it's all like gone to shit.
Yeah. Yeah, the bigger,
marinate in that for a second.
The bigger the dream goal, like the longer the process. And that's why the whole 2020 vision's not about the next year, it's about the next decade. And the whole quote of, I think this is another Tony Robbins quote originally, or he might have got it from somebody else. Some people shift the time scale, but you overestimate what you accomplish in a year, and you underestimate what you can accomplish in a decade. Yeah. Some people say like 5 years, some people say 3 years, whatever.
A large chunk of time.
It's a large chunk of time. Yeah. It's larger than a year. And that's where like the final step of reflection is an annual reflection, which is where I encourage people to either write like a letter to yourself, or post it as a blog post if you're into sharing it with the world, or a vlog. Putting it out in the world is interesting, but writing it, even this requires going back through all of your journals, all of your time box schedules for the year, seeing how ass kicking you were with everything that you've done. Like, it blows your mind if you actually are this. It does take some time to build up this sort of discipline towards it, because it's a lot of like type A stuff, and not everybody's gonna jive with it at first. It becomes easier the more that you do. Again, this it's a daily practice.
It's all a practice. Yeah.
And on that yearly basis, I basically say it's like a chapter in your story. So the reason for this may be just purely for the reflection, the way that the Stoics like to reflect on things, but it may also be because you one day want to have a memoir or whatever. Or maybe it's just to pass down to your kids, like, and your grandkids. It doesn't necessarily. Or maybe it's just
to pat yourself on the back for a second and like take a moment to pause, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's all these things.
Yeah. Because if you don't do that reflection, and I think you even sort of mentioned it in the beginning, it's the start of the new year kind of thing. Yeah. If you don't take that time and ground yourself, you'll burn out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And that's where reflection is very valuable, as like kind of that, just a little bit of like self-care time.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It is so important to me that we look at self-care like outside of bubble baths. Like, a portion of self-care for me yesterday was paying all my parking tickets off, taking care of myself and taking care of my life, and making sure that my finances are aligned so that I'm setting myself up for success. In the future. And I think that this is really timely that you're offering this. So, thank you. This is cool.
Yeah.
And even just maybe this episode hopefully prompts people to take a pause, and even just like, if you really can't get yourself to put pen to paper, just take a pause to think about what started your year and where you are now. And I guarantee you, if you can get out of your like negative Nelly mindset, you'll find at least one thing that you're proud of. At least. Yeah. Right? So like, build yourself up a bit before you jump into 2020, because I think it's going to be a big year for a lot of people. Yeah. And you might as well get set up in the right way.
Yeah. Right. Like, I kind of reflected on the past 2 decades in the introduction to the course. And the reason that I find like I basically just gave you everything that's in the book, but there is, there's more details.
It's going to go deeper and it's going to be more personal because it's their process, not
for sure.
This conversation.
But, and the workbook activities, I think, are the reason that I made it like a course instead of just a book is because taking action on it is 99% of this whole process.
Yep.
But I reflected on the past 2 decades and the way technology's evolved. Because I realized that I've always really been quite interested. Like I originally thought I was going to be a computer engineer.
I don't know that I knew that about you.
Probably not, because I don't think I have. Like when I kind of got enamored by nutrition and exercise and working out for basketball's sake, is when that kind of took a sharp turn. So
I mean, I guess neuroscience and computer science are very similar, but
I guess so.
If you look at the circuitry of the brain and
but that was like I loved like tech stuff, and so so
funny.
It's funny, the introduction. It's kind of a weird introduction in a way, but I think it makes a lot of sense because I reflect on how vastly different I can recall like technology being from the late 90s when I was playing like Magic School Bus computer games and stuff. And I
don't know, that was a thing. That's funny.
No, they were awesome. To where we're at now, where technology is amazing. I have the opportunity to share stuff. You have the opportunity to share stuff through flow codes, like through an online business.
Yeah, it's wild.
But if you don't have the right, I'll call it discipline again. If you don't have the right strategies in place, you're just going to be scrolling through Instagram instead of actually doing the work that's going to make your dreams come true.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like we all have this opportunity to really do cool stuff, but we need a toolkit in place.
And you have to support yourself.
To support yourself and not just get distracted by it. Mm-hmm. And that's where, part of our sort of passion, enjoyment, or philosophy around digital minimalism ties in quite a bit. And all of this stuff kind of comes full circle to a toolkit of things that will help you actually achieve your dream goals.
Cool. Yeah. So if anyone wants to dream in 2020.
For sure. That was like kind of long-winded. But,
no, but those little nuggets are so important. And I think even if you don't, dive into this course, like if you're just not into it, I think that you can still pick something up from what you said. So it's cool that you're offering that. But I highly 100%. Recommend to dive deep because this is a really good time of year to do that.
Yeah. And like I've also recorded videos for each day too.
Nice. Good.